Okay, so are you ready to dive into the war of art with us?
Let's do it.
We're tackling Steven Pressfield's work on resistance today,
Oh, yeah.
using excerpts from the book itself.
Awesome.
We had to include that forward.
Oh, of course, of course.
This deep dive is all about helping you understand what resistance is, how it messes with us, and most importantly, how to fight back.
What?
Plus, we'll uncover a surprising link to fundamentalism you might not expect.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right.
Let's go.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people hear resistance and just think, oh, it's laziness, but Pressfield really digs deeper.
It's way more insidious.
It is.
It's not just about skipping a workout or procrastinating on a project. Pressfield lists all these activities that resistance targets,
Yeah.
like writing, starting a business,
Yeah.
even things like sticking to a healthy diet or committing to self-improvement.
Oh, totally.
You know,
Yeah.
all these things.
Absolutely.
So it really is everywhere. It's like resistance is this force that specifically tries to sabotage the things that could lead us to our most fulfilling lives. Pressfield calls this potential within each of us our genius, and he argues that resistance is actively trying to kill it.
That's intense.
Mm.
It makes you think about those times when you felt this almost inexplicable force holding you back.
Right.
I mean, even just the thought of starting a new creative project, like you get this wave and anxiety,
Yeah.
procrastination,
Yeah.
even self-sabotage.
Oh, for sure.
Definitely.
It's wild.
Exactly. And one of Pressfield's most compelling points is that this isn't about beating ourselves up for feeling resistance.
Mhm.
It's about recognizing it for what it is.
Right.
A powerful internal enemy.
Yeah.
And then learning how to fight back.
Okay, so let's get tactical.
Okay.
How does resistance actually operate?
Right.
What are its go-to strategies to keep us stuck?
Well, Pressfield is brilliant when he points out that resistance's primary weapon is procrastination.
Hmm.
It's that voice that whispers, you can always do it tomorrow.
Ugh. And before you know it, weeks, months, even years have passed. What's so fascinating to me is how it disguises itself as things we think are harmless or even beneficial.
He gives examples that really hit home.
Yeah.
Like seeking constant validation from others,
Mhm.
indulging in unhealthy habits.
Yep.
These are things we might not immediately connect to resistance.
Right. It's almost like resistance has studied our weaknesses and knows exactly which buttons to push.
Oh, yeah.
Think about how much time we spend scrolling social media or binge watching shows when we should be working on something important.
Oh, 100%.
That's resistance at work, using those seemingly harmless distractions to keep us from our true potential.
Okay, so how do we break free? If procrastination is the weapon, what's the antidote?
This is where Pressfield introduces turning pro. He argues that the key to overcoming resistance is shifting from an amateur to a professional mindset when it comes to our creative pursuits.
This is where the book gets super practical.
Yeah.
It's not just about understanding the enemy. It's about developing the strategies and the mindset to actually win the war.
Exactly. And one of the core tenets of turning pro is to treat our creative work like a job. Showing up consistently, setting clear goals,
Yep.
and holding ourselves accountable.
It's like the difference between a weekend hobbyist and a dedicated athlete, right?
Yeah.
The athlete doesn't wait for inspiration to strike.
Totally.
They train every day,
Mm.
regardless of how they feel.
That's such a great analogy. Pressfield emphasizes that professionals show up every day, accept no excuses,
Right.
and constantly work on mastering their technique. They also understand the importance of detaching from the outcome, not letting their ego get too wrapped up in the work.
He tells this great story about finally getting a professional writing job on the movie King Kong Lives.
Yeah.
He was so proud, but then the director just ripped his work apart.
Wow.
It was harsh, but Pressfield says it was a crucial lesson in what it means to be a professional.
Right. That anecdote really highlights the difference between an amateur and a pro. The amateur seeks praise and validation,
Yeah.
while the professional seeks feedback and growth, even when it's painful.
They want to get better.
They understand that criticism, even when it's harsh, can be a powerful tool for improvement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So turning pro is about getting serious, putting in the work, and not shying away from the tough stuff.
Yeah.
But then Pressfield takes it a step further, right?
Yeah.
He introduces this whole idea of a higher realm that supports our creative endeavors. This is where things get a little more mystical, maybe.
He does use terms like muses and angels,
Yeah.
which can definitely be interpreted in different ways. We could take them literally.
Right.
But they can also be seen as metaphors for tapping into our unconscious mind
Right.
or accessing a source of creativity and wisdom that's beyond our everyday awareness.
This resonates with me, especially after reading Pressfield's personal experiences.
Yeah.
He describes this powerful practice called the invocation of the muse.
Yeah.
And he even shares this incredible vision of an eagle that guides him.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear he believes in connecting to something bigger than himself when he creates.
I think what's important here is that Pressfield isn't trying to impose a specific belief system on us. He's simply pointing to the possibility that there's more to the creative process than just our conscious effort.
It's like he's saying, hey, there might be this incredible source of support and inspiration available to you. Are you open to exploring it?
Exactly. And I think that's a question worth asking ourselves. Are we open to the possibility that there's more to creativity than we currently understand? Are we willing to tap into that deeper well of inspiration?
It makes me think of Carl Jung and his concept of the self, that vast reservoir of wisdom and creativity that lies beneath our conscious awareness.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe Pressfield's higher realm is just another way of describing that same source.
That's a fascinating connection, and it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
Jung believed that we're all connected to something larger than ourselves, something that transcends our individual egos. Maybe that's what Pressfield is tapping into when he invokes the muse or connects to that eagle vision.
It's powerful stuff.
It is.
And I think it's a powerful message for anyone struggling to tap into their own creativity. It's not just about willpower or talent. It's also about opening ourselves to the possibility of receiving support and guidance from something larger than ourselves.
And maybe, just maybe, that's the key to unlocking our full creative potential.
I love that.
Yeah,
This is getting me fired up to explore these ideas further.
I know, me too.
But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's bring it back to Pressfield's distinction between territory and hierarchy.
Okay.
This is a concept that I think a lot of people struggle with, especially in the context of creative work.
It's definitely one of the most thought-provoking ideas in the War of Art, and it has profound implications for how we approach our creative lives.
So let's break it down. What exactly does Pressfield mean by territory versus hierarchy?
He uses a great analogy to illustrate this. He says that a dog defending its territory doesn't care about its ranking in the pack.
I love that.
It's solely focused on protecting its home turf.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So simple, but it perfectly captures the essence of the territorial mindset.
Exactly. And he contrasts this with the hierarchical mindset, which he compares to high school.
Ooh, high school.
It's all about climbing the social ladder.
Right.
Seeking approval from those in positions of power.
Yep.
Constantly comparing ourselves to others.
It's like this endless game of one-upmanship.
It is.
You know,
Really.
always striving to be better, smarter, more successful
Yep.
than the next person.
And the problem with this, as Pressfield points out, is that it takes us away from our true creative purpose. It makes us focus on external validation rather than internal fulfillment.
Like we're constantly looking over our shoulder,
Yeah.
worried about what other people think,
Right.
instead of trusting our own instincts and following our own path.
And this is where the distinction between territory and hierarchy becomes so crucial for artists.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pressfield argues that artists must operate from a territorial mindset. They need to claim their own creative space,
Right.
their own unique voice, and then fiercely protect it from the intrusions of the hierarchy.
I love that
Yeah.
so much.
He uses the example of his own experience writing The Legend of Bagger Vance.
Oh, yeah.
He had to trust his inner vision and resist the temptation to cater to market pressures, even though it meant taking a financial risk.
Wow.
He knew that if he compromised his creative integrity, he would lose something far more valuable than money.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, it's a great story.
It reminds us that true artistic expression often requires us to stand our ground,
Yeah,
trust our instincts, even when the world is telling us to conform.
absolutely. It takes courage, doesn't it, to go against the grain, to follow our own path,
It does.
even when it's uncertain or unpopular.
It's like we have to develop this inner compass,
Right.
this deep knowing of what feels right and true for us,
Yes.
and then have the courage to actually follow it,
Exactly.
even if it leads us off the beaten path.
And I think that's one of the most valuable gifts that Pressfield offers in the War of Art. It's a framework for understanding how to navigate the treacherous waters of the creative life.
Yes.
How to protect our creative territory, and how to stay true to our vision even in the face of resistance.
This has been incredibly insightful.
It has.
I'm already feeling more equipped to identify and fight back against resistance in my own life.
That's great. I'm so glad to hear that.
But before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I'm curious to hear more about this unexpected connection to fundamentalism.
Ah, yes. That's where things get really interesting. Pressfield takes us on a bit of a philosophical journey, exploring the psychological and sociological forces that shape both the artist and the fundamentalist.
This isn't about judging anyone's beliefs, right?
No, not at all.
It's about understanding the deeper patterns at play.
Exactly. Pressfield argues that the artist and the fundamentalist often arise from societies at different stages of development. He suggests that the artist typically emerges in societies characterized by affluence and stability.
It's like they have the space and freedom to explore their inner world, to experiment with new ideas, to challenge the status quo.
Precisely, and they embrace this freedom.
They thrive on it.
They believe in progress, evolution, and the possibility of a better future.
The fundamentalist, on the other hand, often arises from a landscape of despair, from the wreckage of political or military defeat, or from a profound sense of loss.
They tend to view humanity as having fallen from a higher state,
Right.
and they seek to return to a purer, more virtuous past.
It's important to note that Pressfield isn't making a value judgment here.
No.
He's simply observing a pattern,
Right.
highlighting the different psychological and sociological contexts that give rise to these two worldviews.
Exactly.
It's fascinating.
It is.
And then he goes on to say that both the artist and the fundamentalist experience resistance, but in very different ways.
Oh, yeah.
So for the artist, as we've discussed, resistance is that internal force that prevents them from doing their creative work.
Right.
But for the fundamentalist, resistance takes the form of temptation, like the pull of the evil one, seeking to lure them away from their righteous path.
Right. And this ties back to Pressfield's point about the dangers of a hierarchical mindset. He suggests that the fundamentalist, by clinging to a rigid set of beliefs and seeking to impose those beliefs on others, is ultimately trying to control the world around them.
And that control, that need for certainty and order, can actually stifle creativity and prevent us from experiencing the full richness and complexity of life.
I think that's a really important point. It's
Yeah.
not about judging anyone's beliefs. It's about recognizing that any ideology, any belief system can become a form of resistance if it prevents us from being open to new ideas, new experiences, new ways of seeing the world.
And that openness, that willingness to embrace the unknown.
Right.
That's essential for both artists and anyone who seeks to live a truly fulfilling and creative life.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that life is a journey, not a destination,
Yes.
and that the most rewarding experiences often come when we're willing to step outside of our comfort zones
Absolutely.
and embrace the unexpected.
I think that's a great note to end on for this part of our deep dive.
Agreed. We've covered a lot of ground, from understanding the nature of resistance
Yeah.
to exploring the power of turning pro,
Right.
and even dipping our toes into the fascinating connection to fundamentalism.
But we're just getting started. There's so much more to unpack in the War of Art.
There is.
And I'm excited to continue our exploration in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back. You know, as we dig deeper into the War of Art with you,
Yeah.
I'm struck by how Pressfield manages to bridge these big societal ideas with our own individual struggles.
He does, yeah.
Like last time when we were talking about
Yeah.
modern society
Yeah.
in this massive scale,
Mhm.
and the constant information overload
Right.
can really leave us feeling
Yeah.
disconnected.
Lost and disconnected.
Totally.
Anonymity.
Yeah.
You're like a tiny cog in a giant machine.
You feel insignificant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes you crave that sense of belonging and purpose.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe like a set of rules to follow.
And I think Pressfield's point is that for a lot of people, fundamentalism offers that kind of stability.
Right.
Clear answers, a defined moral code,
Yes.
a sense of community
Yes.
can be incredibly appealing in a world that feels so chaotic
Right.
and fragmented.
Right.
But the trade-off, as he highlights, is that it often comes with a rejection of anything that challenges those beliefs.
Yeah. And that closes you off.
It does.
All these new experiences.
Yeah.
New perspectives.
Possibilities.
And that closed-off mindset, that rigidity,
Right.
that's what Pressfield sees as the antithesis of the artistic spirit. Remember how we talked about the artist embracing the unknown?
Yes, it's like they live in this constant state of beginner's mind,
Mm-hmm.
always open to learning, growing, evolving. And that openness is what allows them to connect to that higher realm of creativity and get into that flow state where amazing things happen.
Precisely. Maybe this is a good moment to connect back to you listening right now. Where do you fall on this spectrum?
Yeah.
What are those areas of your life where you find yourself clinging to certainty, to a rigid set of rules?
Yeah.
And on the flip side, where do you feel that sense of freedom and openness, like
Yeah.
willingness to embrace the unknown?
These are good questions.
Yeah.
I think the point is not to judge anyone's beliefs. It's just to recognize that any rigid ideology, whether religious or secular,
Mm-hmm.
can become a form of resistance.
Because at its core, resistance is anything that keeps us from our true potential, from living a life that is aligned with our deepest values and aspirations.
So true.
Yeah.
And this brings us back to one of the core messages of the war of art. Overcoming resistance is not just about producing art. It's about embracing a way of life that's grounded in curiosity, openness, and a willingness to challenge our own assumptions.
It's about stepping outside of our comfort zones,
Yes.
questioning the status quo and daring to create something new, something that expresses our unique perspective and contributes to the ongoing evolution of human consciousness.
And that, I think, is the essence of what Pressfield calls turning pro.
It's about adopting a mindset that's not defined by external validation or societal norms, but rather by an unwavering commitment to our craft, to our calling, to our truest selves.
You know, as we're talking about this, I'm
Yeah.
thinking about those times I've felt that pull of resistance the strongest.
Oh,
Like when I'm about to start a new project or share my work with others,
for sure.
like this wave of fear and self-doubt
Oh, yeah.
just washes over me.
Absolutely. We all experience that. And Pressfield has this brilliant analogy for how resistance operates. He compares it to a telemarketer.
A telemarketer.
Yeah, a telemarketer.
Okay.
Think about it.
Okay.
If you answer the phone, you've already given them your attention, your energy. They've got you on the line.
Okay.
And it's the same with resistance. If you engage with those negative thoughts, you're not good enough, or why bother? No one will care. You've already lost the battle.
That's so true.
It is.
So the key is to not even pick up the phone.
Exactly. Treat them like those annoying telemarketing calls. Don't answer, don't engage.
Don't engage.
Stay focused on the work,
Yeah.
on the task at hand.
This is where those daily rituals and routines we talked about earlier become so crucial, right?
Absolutely. They're like building a fortress around your creative time.
Yeah.
Establishing those boundaries sends a clear message to the world and to your own inner critic that this time is sacred
Yes.
and this work is important.
It's about taking your craft seriously,
It is.
treating it with the same level of dedication and discipline as you would any other profession.
And what's so cool about this is that it doesn't mean sacrificing joy or passion. In fact, it's quite the opposite.
Right.
When we approach our work with this professional mindset,
Yeah.
we actually free ourselves to experience more joy, more fulfillment, and more creative flow.
Because when we're fully engaged in the work,
Yeah,
when we're not letting resistance derail us,
right.
it's like we tap into a level of focus and creativity that's truly exhilarating.
It is. It's amazing.
But we step into alignment with our true purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and that alignment brings this deep sense of satisfaction that no amount of external validation can ever match.
Pressfield beautifully connects this back to the ancient Greeks and their understanding of the muses, those
Yeah.
divine beings who inspired artistic creation.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I love how he emphasizes the importance of ritual and sacrifice in cultivating that connection to a higher realm.
Yeah.
He even shares his personal prayer to the muse, the one he recites every day before he sits down to write.
It's a beautiful reminder that we don't have to create in a vacuum, that there are forces, seen and unseen, that can support us if we humble ourselves and ask for guidance.
It's like we're all part of this vast web of interconnected consciousness. And when we create, we're not just expressing ourselves, we're also contributing to that web, adding our own unique thread to the tapestry of human experience.
Now, that's a truly awe-inspiring thought.
It is.
And it's a powerful antidote to the despair and disillusionment that Pressfield describes as the breeding ground for fundamentalism.
Because when we connect to our creative power, we tap into a source of hope, of possibility, of faith in the future.
Right.
And that can be incredibly transformative, both for ourselves and for the world around us.
It's true.
This reminds me of one of Pressfield's most fascinating and perhaps counterintuitive
Right.
points. The idea that the greatest fear we face is not failure,
Oh, yeah.
but success.
It does seem a bit backward.
It does.
But I think what he's getting at is that fear of success often stems from a deeper fear of change.
Right. We're afraid of what might happen if we actually achieve our dreams.
We are.
Will we be able to handle the responsibility? Will we lose ourselves in the process? Will we be able to sustain that level of success?
And that fear, that reluctance to step into our full potential, can keep us playing small and settling for a life that is less than what we are capable of.
It's like the ultimate form of self-sabotage.
Yes.
So the question becomes, how do we overcome this fear of success and embrace the fullness of our creative potential?
How do we do it?
Yeah.
What's the antidote to this resistance to our own greatness?
What is it?
Pressfield argues that the answer lies in cultivating a sense of surrender.
Ooh.
It's about letting go of the need to control everything, of the illusion that we are the sole authors of our destiny.
It reminds me of a surfer riding a wave. The surfer doesn't control the wave, but they learn to ride it.
Oh, that's good.
They use their skill and intuition to navigate its power and find those moments of grace and flow within its unpredictable movements.
That's such a great analogy. Similarly, the artist can't control the creative process.
Right.
They can only surrender to it.
Right.
They must trust that the inspiration will come, the ideas will flow, if they simply show up consistently and do the work.
It's about having faith, not just in ourselves,
Yeah.
but in something larger than ourselves, something that wants to express itself through us.
And when we tap into that sense of surrender, we release the burden of expectation and allow ourselves to be guided by something greater than our ego. We open ourselves to the possibility of achieving something truly extraordinary, something that transcends our limited human vision.
And that ties back to Pressfield's distinction between art and fundamentalism. Fundamentalism, at its core, is about control, imposing a fixed order on a world that's inherently chaotic
Right.
and unpredictable.
But art embraces that chaos and uncertainty.
It does.
It finds beauty and meaning within the messy, unpredictable nature of life.
It's beautiful.
It is.
I think that's one of the most courageous things we can do as human beings, to trust that the universe has a plan, even when we can't see the whole picture, to follow our creative impulses wherever they may lead, even if it means making mistakes along the way.
Because as Pressfield so brilliantly points out, in those mistakes, those stumbles, those moments of getting back up and dusting ourselves off, that we truly learn and grow.
This is where we really start to develop resilience,
Yeah.
right? Hone our craft and discover the full scope of our potential.
And remember that key characteristic of the professional, the willingness to embrace failure as part of the process.
Yes.
Pressfield's contrast between the amateur and the professional is so insightful. The amateur is terrified of failure, so they never even attempt to create anything worthwhile.
They're just too afraid.
They are too busy protecting their ego, their fragile sense of self-importance.
But the professional understands that failure is simply a stepping stone on the path to success.
They do.
It's about embracing the growth mindset,
It is. Totally.
believing that we are always evolving, always learning, always becoming more than we were yesterday.
Exactly. And contempt for failure is not about being reckless or indifferent to the quality of our work. It's about detaching from the emotional weight of failure, not allowing it to define us or knock us off course.
This all comes back to treating our creative endeavors as a profession.
Yes.
It requires discipline, dedication,
Yeah.
and a willingness to embrace discomfort.
Just like Pressfield learned in the Marine Corps.
That was a great anecdote.
It was.
It really highlights the fact that the creative life, just like any other worthy pursuit, is full of challenges.
It is.
There are times when you have to push through the boredom,
Yeah.
self-doubt,
Exhaustion.
just to get the work done.
It's about developing mental toughness.
It is.
That grit and determination that allows us to keep going even when every fiber of our being wants to give up.
For sure.
And Pressfield argues that this is a skill that can be developed, just like any other.
It takes practice, discipline,
Yeah.
a willingness to embrace the suck.
The creative process is not always glamorous. Sometimes it's just plain hard work.
Right.
But it's in those moments of pushing through the resistance that we often find the deepest sense of satisfaction
Yes.
and tap into our true potential.
And it's in those moments that we're most likely to connect to that higher realm
Right.
that Pressfield talks about.
It's like we become a conduit for something larger than ourselves.
And that's amazing.
It is. And the realization that the journey itself is the reward.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate triumph over resistance.
As we delve even further into this idea of turning pro, it really strikes me that Pressfield isn't just advocating for a change in mindset,
Right.
but for a deep commitment to mastering our craft.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He constantly emphasizes the importance of dedicating ourselves to the relentless pursuit of excellence.
Yeah.
Remember how he compares the professional artist to a dedicated athlete,
Oh, yeah.
rigorously training and constantly striving to improve?
Yeah. I mean, it really challenges that whole romanticized notion of the starving artist
Right.
who's just relying solely on inspiration.
Yeah, totally.
Pressfield seems to be saying that true creativity requires raw talent
Mm-hmm.
and disciplined effort.
Yeah. He reminds us that even the muses, those ancient Greek goddesses of inspiration, favored those who were willing to put in the work.
Right.
They didn't reward laziness, but rather dedication and a commitment to honing one's skills.
It's like that saying, inspiration favors the prepared mind. Right.
Oh,
You have to create the conditions, cultivate the skills, and do the groundwork to be ready for those flashes of insight.
Precisely. And this brings us to one of the most intriguing and perhaps controversial aspects of Pressfield's work, his concept of the higher realm.
Oh, yes. This is where things get really interesting.
It does.
And maybe even a little mystical.
A little bit.
He talks about this realm beyond the material world,
Yeah.
a realm of pure potential and divine inspiration that we can tap into if we're open to it.
Yeah, he uses terms like muses and angels to describe the forces at play in this realm, and he acknowledges that this might sound a bit out there to some people.
Right.
But his point is that there's real power in recognizing that we're not creating in a vacuum.
It's about acknowledging that there might be forces beyond ourselves that can support us, guide us, inspire us.
Yeah, he shares some pretty compelling personal anecdotes about this. Like the one about that vivid dream
Oh, yeah.
where he receives guidance from this wise eagle,
Yeah.
and another powerful vision where he connects to this source of energy that he can only describe as divine.
And, he also talks about how ritual and prayer can play a role in cultivating a connection to this higher realm.
Yeah, he does.
He describes his own daily practice of invoking the muse
Right.
before he writes, setting aside that time to connect to that creative energy.
What I appreciate is that Pressfield doesn't try to impose a specific belief system on us. He's simply saying, hey, there might be something more to this creative process than we realize. Are you willing to explore it?
That's a great question.
It is.
I think for anyone who's ever felt stuck, creatively blocked,
Yeah.
Yeah. It invites us to consider the possibility that there's a source of inspiration and support available to us
Yeah.
if we're willing to open ourselves to it.
So what are your thoughts on this, listening in? Does this idea of a higher realm resonate with you? And how might you incorporate some of Pressfield's suggestions, like setting an intention or creating a ritual, into your own creative practice?
These are really important questions, I think,
They are.
to consider, because even if you're skeptical about the idea of a higher realm,
Yeah.
there's no denying the power of intention,
Right.
ritual,
Yeah.
in focusing our energy
Right.
and creating space for inspiration to flow.
Absolutely. And I think that's a key takeaway from The War of Art. It's not about blindly following a dogma, but rather about finding what works for you,
Right.
experimenting with different practices, and ultimately creating a creative process that supports and nourishes your unique creative spirit.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into The War of Art, I guess the big question is, what are the key takeaways that we can apply to our own lives?
Yeah.
What's the wisdom we can extract from Pressfield's work?
For me, one of the most important lessons is that resistance is real.
Yeah.
It's not just laziness or procrastination.
Right.
It's a force that wants to keep us small and prevent us from living up to our full potential.
But by turning pro,
Right.
by embracing that mindset of discipline and dedication,
Yeah,
we can learn to overcome that resistance.
we can. And it's about recognizing that the creative process isn't always glamorous or easy. There will be times when we have to push through boredom,
Right.
self-doubt,
Yeah.
exhaustion, just to get the work done.
But it's in those moments of pushing
Yeah, right.
through
Yeah.
the resistance that we often discover the deepest rewards.
It's about the satisfaction of creating something meaningful, something that wouldn't exist without our effort. It's also about tapping into that flow state, that connection to something larger than ourselves, where the real magic happens.
But remember, We are not alone on this journey.
We are not.
There's a whole community of artists and creators out there
Yeah.
who are facing the same challenges, fighting the same battles, and creating amazing things despite the resistance.
So if you are feeling stuck or if you are struggling with resistance, remember Pressfield's words. Turn pro, show up, do the work, and trust that the inspiration will follow.
We hope you found this deep dive into the war of art helpful and inspiring. It's a book that we highly recommend reading and rereading. It's full of wisdom and practical advice that can help you navigate the challenges of the creative life.
And as we leave you with this final thought, consider what areas of your life feel like territories, those places where you find true sustenance and fulfillment. How can you claim and cultivate those spaces more intentionally with the same dedication and discipline that Pressfield describes? Remember, the battle against resistance is a lifelong journey, but it's a journey worth taking.
So go forth and create without fear, without hesitation, and without apology.
The world needs your unique voice, your vision, your contribution.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep creating.